We'll start.
That confidence that the workers and the farmers have in the red flag on economic issues, that degree of confidence we have not been able to generate on social and social oppression issues.
It became like one of those match the following exercises, wherein I really couldn't tell apart the lines of, at least CPI-ML, we'll keep it aside for a second. CPI, CPM, I just couldn't tell the line apart. But this reunification talk, right? The CPI always seems to have its door open, and the CPM seems to have a door half open, closed.
Right now, between the CPI and us, on most of the positions, there's a commonality. But then,
the flippant response to that would be that the communists sit across in these coffee houses and they're discussing theory while the country is burning.
That's what I don't want to do. Unification does not come with a golden handshake from the top by the leadership. It has to be built from below.
When it comes to Ukraine, your position, the CPI's position is fairly similar. But the CPI-ML...
This war has been caused by USA and NATO. And it is being used, the present Ukraine regime, by the NATO alliance and USA for its eastward expansion. And what is actually being created in the world today by this NATO alliance and led by the US is actually pushing the world into another Cold War situation. So Stalin's treatment of Ukraine was also purely from the war effort.
Alexander Dugin, Putin's Rasputin. He says that there are these civilizational states. India is a civilizational state, so is China and Russia. And there's some kind of ethno-nationalist kind of imagination he has, saying that Akhand Bharat, Akhand Russia.
These sort of things, they find an empathy with each other. Bolsonaro, Erdogan, Putin and Modi. I mean, you have, this sort of a trend of a rightward shift. And the rightward shift has got very strong fascistic elements.
What influence do you have today on the international communist movement? You went to China last year? Last year? You and Mr. Raja? Year before last. Do you take to them saying that, hey, this is our constitution?
No.
This is how democracy works and this is the framework in which we are functioning? Communists have not figured out the question of identity.
I said annihilation of caste cannot happen without taking the entire class question in mind. So that's why I said in India the class struggle, not a general struggle. The class struggle in India stands on 2 feet.
I'll take you back to your run-ins with Kanshiram. Sitaram versus Kanshiram, right? He asked you, where is your leadership? Where is your Dalit leadership? In Bengal, you are in power. And you came back and you said,
this is actually a slur against the communists. That you are anti-Dalit, anti-this thing, you're not conscious of this, etc. In fact, the slogan of laal-neel was a slogan that
but there is no Neel in any of your alliances, no sir? I mean,
why don't your tribe understand the actual reality? Tribe means a journalist.
The most influential ism in the country today appears to be Hindutva. It has taken a long time for this ideology to come of age. But what happened to the other ideological movements that began in the early 20th century? The RSS will turn 100 years old next year, but so will the Communist Party of India. Ambedkarism, Marxism, liberalism, Dravidianism, feminism, Gandhiism. What role are these great big isms of the 20th century playing in the 21st century? What relevance do they have today?
I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an a-leprechaun.
Why have there been casteism existing in the country still today?
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal
The
rights.
nature of the system is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit.
The national elections are around the corner, and what better time than now to talk about isms? I'm Sudipto Mondal, and welcome to this special election series of What's Your Ism? They are part of the most enduring political alliance in the history of India. The two principal communist parties of India, the CPI and the CPM, have walked together for so long that it has become hard to tell them apart. What is the difference between their political lines? And what happened to all that talk of reunification? Join me in this two-part series as I speak to the General Secretaries of the two parties, D. Raja and Sitaram Yechury, about communism in India. So today we are going to try and understand the ism of the General Secretary of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, Sitaram Yechury.
Hi.
Hi, sir. Thank you for coming on this show.
Welcome.
Sir, the thing is, I'm not going to talk to you about seat sharing, what's your equation with Rahul Gandhi, what's happening in these elections. All that is the backdrop, and I thought it's a good backdrop to talk about ideology, sir.
Yeah, good.
Right? And the first question is a very simple one. Do you think your ideology is difficult to understand? Do the masses get your ideology?
No, of course they do. I mean, the point is, it's not difficult to understand, but it's a little difficult to internalize. And because whether they understand or internalize or not, everybody is facing that sort of exploitation which my ideology speaks about, which has to be ended. So we are living that part. Every human being, I mean, who belongs to the exploited sections, and that is the vast majority.
So they understand the fact that there is this rich capitalist sitting on top, and that they are being exploited. And in the most basic sense, they might understand the class struggle. But let me put it to you. So now I have a lot of cousins and nephews who are probably going to be first-time voters this time. And some of them are from Calcutta, and they worked in student movements also. But if you ask them what is the difference between CPI, CPIM and CPIML, I don't think they'll be able to answer, and I don't think a lot of senior comrades also are able to answer that very convincingly. What's the difference, sir?
Well, the difference was, I mean, it goes back into historical period. When the entire question arose.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry. That historic, I thought you will say this, the historical thing. I mean, pardon me for saying this, but we have a sense of what happened and why you guys split up and all those things. Where does it stand now, sir? What are the differences now?
Because unless you understand that history, it's very difficult to say where do you stand now.
Sure, okay.
So the basic question was that what is the manner in which you can have a social transformation process in India?
Right.
I mean, one was while being attached to the ruling party of that time, which was talking socialist rhetoric.
Yeah.
And therefore, the whole theory emerged that there is a possibility to bypass the stage of capitalism and move towards socialism. And India is one of such cases. So you had one section of the communist movement aligned with those in the world who were propagating this non-capitalist path of development. And that was primarily the Russian Communist Party, CPSU. And one section aligned with that understanding. The other one was that in India, the ruling classes, everything also centered around the assessment of the ruling classes. Sure. In India, the ruling classes was actually, doesn't have a sizable social base. It's isolated from the people. It is ruling precisely because it has been set up by imperialism to rule. And therefore, it's an imperialist puppet. So it's a comprador class.
Right.
So one section thought it was a progressive class. One said it was a comprador.
Comprador.
Comprador means it is somebody who's actually subservient to imperialist interests.
Collaborators?
Collaboration, it's worse than collaboration. Collaboration is, you can collaborate on equal terms.
Right.
But comprador is that you are an unequal collaborator, where you are the junior and you listen to them.
Right.
So that's why you are virtually like a puppet for them.
An undertaker.
Well, not in the physical sense of an undertaker, but in a sense that's right. And the third section said that no, the Indian ruling classes has a sizable social following, and unless we are able to weed away that social following towards the revolutionary movement, you cannot really advance.
Right.
So the first category of a progressive bourgeoisie, that became the CPI. The third category of a comprador or say subservient bourgeoisie, which had no social base, so it's very easy to overthrow them. All that is required is to arm the people.
Right.
So therefore, people's revolution, or arming the people, and the armed revolution concept, and that became then those days called the Naxalites, which is today the Maoist
Party.
And the third one, we said no, it is an independent social base of the ruling classes, which has to be weaned away from them. That can happen only through struggles against their policies. And that was the CPIM. So one was the Russian path, one was the Chinese path. We said we are the Indian path. So we remain that. So that is the difference. Now what is the difference today?
Today, yeah. And when we talk about today, sir, I also tried to do a little bit of homework and I gave up after that. The reason I say this is, see, here I have the 24th Party Congress of the CPI. Yours is on the website, so I read that.
Good.
I read the CPI-ML, and it became like one of those match the following exercises, wherein I really couldn't tell apart the lines of, at least CPI-ML, we'll keep it aside for a second. CPI, CPM, I just couldn't tell the line apart. And why do you think that is? And while you're answering that, sir, I will still push you once again, but this reunification talk, right? The CPI always seems to have its door open, and the CPM seems to have a door half open, closed. What is this reunification thing? And please tell me about that.
I'll come to that. But right now, between the CPI and us, on most of the positions, there's a commonality of approach. But then on some tactical issues, there will be differences. That's only natural. Even in the same party, you can have differences within the same leadership committees as well. I mean, that's perfectly okay. But with the CPI, the background of the split and the division, I mean, those questions are not yet resolved.
Can you repeat that, sir? What's that again?
Those questions that led to the division of the party.
Right. You think they're not?
They're not yet resolved. I mean, in the sense that they're not theoretically resolved. It can be. We can sit down and talk about them and try and do that, but then that will take a lot of time. And the actual situation in the country doesn't permit that luxury at the moment.
Can I respond to that in a very flippant way, if you don't mind? See, the flippant response to that would be that the communists sit across in these coffee houses and they're discussing theory while the country is burning.
That's what I don't want to do.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's no point in going through that sort of an exercise.
Right.
But the point is, on many of the practical issues, tactical issues, there's a commonality. With the question of unification that you talked of. Unification does not come with a golden handshake from the top by the leadership. It has to be built from below. We have seen such process of unifications from the top and how they crumble like a house of cards.
Right.
Nepal is the classic example.
Nepal, of course.
All of them united, the three of them again.
Yeah,
three
again
factions.
three, exactly.
Similar. In South Asia, I mean, you almost had the similar, what you call, divisions like you had in India.
Right.
So they all sat down together, shook their hands and said, we're a unified party now.
Right.
But it didn't work down below. Now they are again separated into three fractions. Now that will lead to more damage to the United Movement than good. So what is required is to build up that unity from below and not try and formally unite from the top.
Which means the mass organizations, AITUC, CITU, all of these.
So let this, and that is happening at the lower level.
Is it happening? Because, okay, I'll just speak from my reporting experience. So I told you I was working in Mangalore, and there the BD unions are your backbone, at least were BD unions and your tile unions.
Yeah.
In the negotiations, AITUC, CITU are constantly at each other's throat, and they're, 19-20 ka farak kind of in line, saying PF should be how much, gratuity should be.
That is the
how do you?
Unless you resolve all these issues at the ground level, no unification, proper unification is possible.
Then why does the CPI...
So these unions, in trade unions, for example, you have your student organization, women's organizations, you have your Kisan organizations. So unless they start working together and resolve their issues, that is what is happening. In many places, whether it's succeeding or not, like you said, the example that you've given, that is not the point. The point is the effort being made. Then it will succeed over a period of time. So that is the process through which any unification is possible.
And that effort is happening, you think?
But in practical purposes, from the top, we are moving unitedly. I mean, not only we, along with the rest of the left parties. The five of them, and that is at the level of political responses to what is happening, our discussions with the other parties, on issues like that.
Yeah.
On that there is commonality. So this is the process of unification that will take a little time, but that will be much more stable and permanent rather than having a handshake, golden handshake sort of a thing.
So I'll ask you one more question, if you'll allow me, on this subject. I didn't let you finish your theoretical points. Okay, is there a simple way of telling us what the theoretical differences between the CPI's line and the CPM's line are, in a simple way, for my nephews and cousins?
No.
Yes.
Now, theoretically, the question is of an assessment of the class character of the ruling party. Who is the ruling party in India?
Right, right.
We say that this is a bourgeois landlord, that is the capitalist and the landed vested interests. They are in alliance led by the big corporates or the big capitalists.
Right.
So the leadership of the ruling classes is the big corporates, big capitalist class. Your big, your big five. I mean, everybody understands who they are.
Name them. Every time, one more chance for you to name them.
Earlier it was Tatas and Birlas and people like that. Now it's Adanis and Ambanis. They are leading this combination.
Right.
Now,
and the landlord class, how do you identify?
Yeah, the landlord class are those who actually even today, own huge amounts of land in whichever form. They bypass the abolition of zamindari, laws, and still retain a huge amount of land.
Right.
There are landlord class sections. There's a rich peasantry, there's a middle peasantry, and then of course there's the poor peasantry and marginal farmers, which is the bulk. So these are the classes within within rural India.
Right.
Now the question is that while the CPI still continues to remain that this is essentially a bourgeois state, that is in the sense it is the capitalist state,
okay.
which may be cooperating this thing with the landlords, but they don't accept landlords are actually an integral part of the state.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, but this is also over a period of time that's also changing with them, as well as this understanding. That's why I said it will take a matter of time before these discussions will come up.
Okay.
So in practical terms, what does it mean? It means that any of policies which are aimed at consolidating their class interest, which essentially means actually intensifying exploitation of the exploited sections. If you want to consolidate the other end, you have to intensify exploitation at this end.
Right.
So those issues you will have to mount much bigger and stronger united struggles. And which the classic example is what you've seen with the farmers' struggle this time.
Actually, so the farmer struggle this time, it's a little, how do I put it? You can't put a finger on it, right?
No.
This round, your party as well as the CPI has taken a slightly guarded position. You're not part of the alliance, are you, this time?
No. You see,
what exactly
there was one section of the farmers who did not formally associate with the SKM, Sanयुkt Kisan Morcha. They conducted the struggle but on a separate platform.
Right.
This one is led by those who conducted the separate thing, which also included those who broke through to the Red Fort, if you last remember the tractor march, etc.
Of course.
They did that. But the SKM is fully supporting them, supporting their struggle, and also in solidarity with the repression that has been unleashed on them.
Right.
They are taking solidarity actions, etc. We've also condemned all that repression and things. So that is the difference. I mean, they are not formally part of the SKM.
Have they been, there's some whispers that they've been infiltrated in a sense by certain right-wing formations. Is that true?
That is what generally the apprehension, or let us say the feeling is.
That is
The feeling is, but nevertheless, but on the question of solidarity with the Kisans and their struggles, because the demand is something which is same. That is, you have to have a legal guarantee for a minimum support price. As per the Swaminathan Commission, who's now been given the Bharat Ratna, of that anti-cost of interest plus 50%.
Right.
That is C2, the estimator, plus 50%. So since demand is the same, they are supporting. But now it has reached a stage where the obduracy of the government is once again very obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, earlier, for 1 year, they would refuse to really discuss with the Kisans. they had number of meetings where Kisans were called to Vigyan Bhavan to have their meeting. And in fact, the Kisan leadership did not even eat the food they provided, the government.
Yeah.
So
They were a lot more militant
Yeah,
on that
yeah.
occasion. Yeah.
but entirely peaceful again, without doing anything else. But this time around, on 3 occasions, I think, at least 2 occasions, 3 ministers flew down to Chandigarh to talk to these people. But still nothing came out.
Right.
So there's pressure from below among the Kisans saying that nothing short of a legal guarantee for an MSP.
Okay, I'll come to this again, this question of Kisan. Who is Kisan? You used 3-4 terms to describe different sections of the agricultural class. You said landlords, peasantry, medium landholders and all that. We'll come to that part. But when you broke down your solidarity or the extension of your support on the basis of there are some economic realities, there are some demands on that basis, we support it to that extent. Do you feel that I've seen this happening over and over again with the left, where they extend this kind of solidarity to labor issues, and that body of laborers or the union that is agitating may be progressive in terms of their demand on the economic front, but they also happen to be a little culturally woozy or a little difficult to define, more often than not little right-wing, maybe little Sanghi, and that part is somehow come to define many of your union activities, right? Which is that you are working with, let's say, even the case of Mangalore again. My experience of reporting on unions is from there. So the same person who's coming for a protest demanding PF and gratuity, part of a C2 or a AI2C protest, is also doing Jai Shri Ram somewhere, okay? Because that cultural education hasn't happened. Do you think that's a failure?
No, it's not. I mean, it is definitely a shortcoming. I mean, that's why the general adage goes that for struggles is the red flag. For voting, it's some other color. The flag is of a different color. So that confidence that the workers and the farmers have in the red flag on economic issues, that degree of confidence we have not been able to generate on social and social oppression issues.
That's a candid admission. Okay.
Yeah. So that is the shortcoming.
It is a shortcoming.
That is definitely what has to be overcome, and we are working towards that. But in this agitation, you will find it's for the first time that the entire cross-section of the agricultural workers, and from agricultural workers to the rich peasantry, they all came together in opposition to these farm laws, supported by the trade unions. That is a very significant part of it. And trade unions supporting, the Kisan supporting the trade union struggles. So this solidarity is a new feature and a very important feature.
Okay, noted. Okay. Sir, yours is a party, or you're part of a movement which has always had a very strong opinion on international affairs, right? And I was, like I said, I did some homework, read your party congress documents in Kannur. Now, there were many parties who turned up over there, and I found that most of them, like I said, right, they were saying similar things. Now, when it comes to Ukraine, your position, the CPI's position is fairly similar. NATO, America, this entire build-up on the borders of Russia, troops massing over there, in response to which Russia goes to war. Okay, but the CPI-ML, now this is Dipankar Bhattacharya of the CPI-ML. I'll read out his statement, and then you can tell me how you differ with this. So he says, as you assemble for the 23rd Congress in the shadow of a prolonged pandemic, we are witnessing yet another war in Europe. Putin has declared independent Ukraine a mistake of Lenin and is threatening to undo it by bombing the second largest former Soviet republics out of existence. The war on Ukraine has been on for more than a month now and has already killed thousands of civilians and forced millions to flee for safety. India has the largest number of foreign students studying in Ukraine, and yet the Modi government did precious little by way of diplomatic initiatives to stop the war or logistical arrangements to ensure speedy, safe evacuation of students stuck in Ukraine. Just as Modi's India has betrayed the Palestinian cause in the face of intensified Israeli aggression, it now effectively supports Putin's invasion of Ukraine. The victorious revolution of 1917 had not only snapped the imperialist chain at its weakest link and freed Russia from the shackles of the Tsarist autocracy, it had also ended toxic domination of the great Russian chauvinism to turn the prison of nationalities into a multinational socialist confederation. Geopolitical factors apart, the current war is essentially an attempt to destroy that Leninist legacy. We Indian communists cherish the revolutionary legacy of Lenin and raise our voice for peace and justice, rejecting Putin's war and the US-NATO expansionist design in Europe. What do you think?
Well, there is a difference in perception of that entire reality. That the war was caused by Putin, according to what you read out to me.
This is Dipankar, not me. This is Dipankar Bhattacharya, CPI-ML General Secretary.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. I mean, the war is caused by Putin. Whereas our assessment and understanding, which is also the CPI's assessment and understanding, is this war has been caused by USA and NATO. And this was the entire, the betrayal, I mean, which is only expected.
By way of provocation, you mean?
Huh?
I saw your documents, by way of provocation.
I'm just coming to it. I mean, betrayal, which is only natural, expected from them, of saying that they will not move east of Berlin. When the Cold War ended, when the Berlin Wall fell, the NATO will not move eastward. But it's now gone all over the place, except in Ukraine and maybe Georgia, I think. I don't know if it's formally joined or not yet. Except for these two former Soviet republics, except for these two, you had all the others being grabbed by NATO. So the NATO alliance is on the doorstep of Russia. And you virtually not only provoked but threatened Russia through this NATO thing, etc. So what we have said is that this war must end immediately. When immediately, at the same time, the NATO alliance should move back to where they promised that they would be. And it's no longer a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I mean, it's now a global military alliance, led by the USA. So this has got a very, very serious international ramifications. It's a global military alliance which can intervene like it did in Afghanistan, like it did with various parts of the Middle East, and like it's doing now with in various countries of Middle, like Syria, like in Iran, on the ongoing genocidal assault of Israel against the Palestinians. And so,
I'm just letting you list out the evil things that NATO and US have done. I mean, it's known, but you have a right to talk about it. You should also. Okay.
I mean, it's not really known. I mean, it's
no, come on. No. We know, but anyway, you should talk about it.
Yeah. And you see, so that is the actual provocation.
Right.
NATO, I mean, Ukraine is only the theater of this war. Unfortunately, it is the theater of this war. And it is being used, the present Ukraine regime, by the NATO alliance and USA for its, eastward expansion. And what is actually being created in the world today by this NATO alliance and led by the US is actually pushing the world into another Cold War situation.
Sure.
The confrontation with China and this Ukraine war, I mean, all this is pushing the world towards a new Cold War situation, which is our problem.
Okay, this is pushing the world towards Cold War, but it seems to be stretching left ideologues also at their seams. The reason I say this is because I was telling you, right, I had Kavita Krishnan. She quit the party on the question of how not just the CPI-ML but the larger left in India deals with questions of Russia, China, Okay. So she said one thing, which is a provocation I'll offer to you also, and you can respond saying, so she said Ukraine is a former colony of the USSR.
You see, when the USSR was formed, remember, the USSR was formed in 1922. The Russian Revolution triumphed in 1917. After 5 years, each one of these, Eastern European countries, were given the offer
of being part of the Confederation.
Part of the Confederation, and therefore it became the USSR. So when that happened, remember, Lenin himself gave when the draft constitution was there, it said each one of these nationalities, Ukraine, Belarusian, Georgian, etc., they are part of this federation, but with even the right to secede in the case, self-determination of nationalities.
So there is Lenin's legacy, and Kavita talked about Stalin's legacy.
Yeah, again, Stalin's legacy is again what? Which context? You had the war buildup. The first ones to have noticed was that the war is directed by Hitler then. Primary target is the destruction of socialist, USSR.
Yeah.
And that was the principal target.
Sure.
And these frontline states, all these settled Asian republics, were the first ones, or the Eastern European countries, were the first ones to be occupied by Hitler. Because no other capitalist country provided any resistance. Hitler occupies Paris without firing a shot.
Yeah, exactly.
He occupies Vienna and virtually takes it over. And he converts Prague into virtually his capital. That's why you walk through Prague even today, it's like a museum city. Because no buildings were destroyed.
Right.
All the medieval structures are still there in Prague today, standing. So they did not resist. The resistance he was thinking will come only from Soviet Union, and which is what was the final reality. It was the red flag that flew on top of the Reichstag when Hitler war ended. So at that stage, these frontline states, and mainly Ukraine, if you look at their passage, even today, one of the things that rankles the Russians and Putin is actually that the entry of Nazi army is through Ukraine.
Right.
Napoleon is through Ukraine. So that is the part that they are very sensitive to allow that to be controlled by potential adversaries or enemies. So there's that historical background. So Stalin's treatment of Ukraine was also purely from the war effort.
Okay.
And they couldn't stop them there. They couldn't stop them till they entered, till Stalingrad they could go, or Volgograd today. Till that is when the battle turned.
So again, like if you go into history, then obviously it's
obviously you're
no, you have to.
Yeah,
Of course, no, definitely. Yeah. But so if you bring it to the present context, and that's important also because Kavita pointed me to one particular character called Alexander Dugin. He's supposed to be Putin's Rasputin. He's a columnist, has a chair in university, a big university in Russia. He has a chair in a Chinese university also. He's supposed to be the mind of Putin. Now while he talks about multipolarity and all that, which has been the line of the left for a long time, right? There should be a multipolar world. But he says it in a very perverted way. He says that there are these civilizational states. India is a civilizational state, so is China and Russia. And there's some kind of ethno-nationalist kind of imagination he has, saying that Akhand Bharat, Akhand Russia, and this is not some random thing. He's not a random person, and he's not written all this in some random publication, some right rag. In seminar, he wrote this article where he says these things, where he says that if India respects Russia's larger ambitions, Russia can respect India's larger, ambitions and things like that. Do you see in today's time that there's a growing alliance over there between right over there and right in India?
You see, there's always an alliance between all reactionary elements in the world. Whether stated or not stated, public or not public, there's always an empathy between themselves. The great Russian Empire, Catherine the Great, for instance, said that Russia can defend its borders only by expanding it.
Exactly.
I
think that's what Deepankar is saying when he says Russian chauvinism.
So the question is back to Russian imperial chauvinism or whatever that is, or India's Akhand Bharat, or these sort of things, they find an empathy with each other.
Right.
Whether it's stated public policy or not of that particular state at the time. So that's not a big issue. That is to be understood. That people will support each other, such elements.
Right.
And that is true in any of these other countries as well. What do you see in the world today? There's a very sharp noticeable rightward political shift.
Do you see that in Russia? Do you see that
That's
Putin's motivations
also-
might be coming from there?
It's a global phenomenon, including India.
India to hai here. हाँ.
Bolsonaro, Erdogan,
Yeah.
Putin and Modi. I mean, you have, this sort of a trend of a rightward shift. And the rightward shift has got very strong fascistic elements and a direction. So they will find empathy with each other. That is why today Modi is also able to build up this sort of an alliance of these right-wing forces, including the shift to the right in the US itself.
So isn't that a realignment of the old order? So there are right-wing Americans doing business with right-wing Russians, doing business with supposedly, I don't know if it is true, but right-wing Chinese and with Indians. Isn't this something that merits a comment from you, your party? Because I don't see any of that in the document.
No, we have it. In our party Congress resolution, you will find.
Putin is mentioned.
No, we didn't mention names,
Yeah.
but we mentioned the countries where you have these tendencies.
Okay, I might have missed it.
Brazil, Turkey, even India, Russia, where all these tendencies are there. And there's a whole section on this rightward shift in global politics. Now, this is changing, and this only assists the effort to push the world into a new Cold War situation.
Right, I heard you say that. Sir, actually, okay, now my last question in this IR section, this international relations thing, there used to be something called the Comintern when you were a young student activist in the SFI and things like that. And we were made to believe that the Indian Communist parties used to have a fair amount of say in this formation, and that we would take our message and how we practice our communism to the countries in the other parts of the world. Does that because I saw in your party congress, there were foreign delegates, there was somebody from Cuba, from China, from Venezuela.
Yeah, that's in the CPI congress, not in ours.
Yours also? There were some messages of greeting and all that? Not in Kannur?
Earlier they were.
Okay. So my simple question is, what influence do you have today on the international communist movement? You went to China last year? Last year? You and Mr. Raja? Year before last. Do you take to them saying that, hey, this is our constitution?
No.
This is how democracy works, and this is the framework in which we are functioning.
You see, all said and done about Stalin, whatever people may have their opinion.
No, Stalin China.
No, I'll tell you why I'm saying. Once the Second World War ended and fascism was defeated, after that, and the Chinese Revolution triumphed, along with the North Korean and Vietnam and things all that going on. At that point of time, Comintern was shut down. It was shut down because it was felt that there is no real world center of revolution.
Yeah.
And therefore, it was Stalin who took that initiative, saying that you cannot have a world center directing each country, how it should be done. Every country has equal status, independent, and they will have to follow through. Whatever assistance they may ask, that as Communist International, we shall be providing them.
Right.
But there is no platform or a forum like it used to exist pre-Second World War.
So now where does the conversation happen? Is there give and take? Are there discussions about
Yeah,
lines?
there are individual contacts with the communist parties.
Right.
Like we have our relations with all the communist parties, most of the communist parties in the world. They have relations with most of the others in the world. So once a year, there is a gathering of representatives of these communist parties. That is called the International Workers and Communist Parties Conference. They meet once a year, exchange opinions, and work out some actions of solidarity, common actions of solidarity. So that is taking place, that cooperation. But beyond that, there's no world center of a revolution that exists. And I don't think it should.
It shouldn't also. China is very different from India, but is there anything that they can learn from the Indian example, you think?
They want to, they have always been...
Can a Chinese communist learn anything from an Indian communist? Or when you go to China?
Well, they are very, when we go, because when we used to go, of late it's not been happening, there used to be a regular exchange of delegations.
Right.
And not only with the communists, but they would do it with all the other parties,
Yes.
the Congress, the BJP also, Telugu, they all were. So they were very keen, and I think they still are, on how in a capitalist society, how do we manage to win elections in the states, communists, and form governments? and the work of those governments within the capitalist setup, how that can benefit the people. I mean, this is an aspect which is new to them. Completely novel, not only to them, to the Russians, to everybody.
Right, right.
That in a capitalist country, through elections, communists winning and forming governments, that is something they want to understand, I think, deeper, how this is possible, what are the meanings of it, etc. So that's one area they were always interested in.
Okay, interesting. So we'll come to the Indian things. So just one section. This is the last section. And in India, it seems like somehow there's always been this thing, that the communists have not figured out the question of identity. And I don't even want to ask a question straight up. I just want to refer to something that you said in the beginning, right? When you were describing India, which is that there is a capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, then there is large landholders, middle peasants. Now, one may ask, why don't you just say that, there's a Brahmin Banya coalition on top, which is the capitalist. There is a, coalition of intermediary communities who are in charge of land, who are the large landholders in the rural area. In each state, when you talk about the realities being different in different communist countries, there's a lot of difference between different states in India. So somewhere the Reddy is the landlord, somewhere the Gowda is the landlord. But invariably the landless is either a Dalit or an Adivasi, depending on which community it is. Somewhere it may be an Arundadiyar, somewhere it may be a Mala. These nomenclatures, do you think that you should have...
You see, the danger of using this nomenclature, number one, I mean, we shouldn't, because our understanding...
Does that make you a little inaccessible, you think, when everybody's talking that language and you don't, and you're seeking to create this working class revolution, the working class doesn't understand these terminologies?
No, why not? They do. In fact, everybody else who's talking that language also understands.
Right.
The contradictions that are coming through. Why is the demand for a caste census coming from those very sections? Why do they want that existing reality to be fully known? I mean, so therefore, these contradictions, and this has to be understood in a larger context. You see, there's not an issue of caste versus class in India. Caste stratification pre-exists capitalism. That it predates, capitalism.
Right.
So when capitalist development began in India, it began in a society that was already stratified under the caste hierarchies. So it's a class-caste overlap.
Or as you put it, I've got a section where you have been asked this question, and I'm sure you've been asked this question many times. It's one of those things. So you say in an interview to The Hindu, this was 2016, Rohit Vemula had happened, Ambedkar had turned 125 and all of that. So you say there's a cultural identity issue with Dalits. It's a welcome thing, a literature of culture of rebellion against social oppression. But the problem of social oppression cannot be solved only by advancing identity issues. It can be solved primarily by economic empowerment, and along with that, identity issues will also be important. So the solution to the problem of oppression is not an identity issue. For us, it is a class issue. Okay, and then I'll read out a section, one small little section from an article Mr. Raja wrote, same 2015-16. He says about Ambedkar. He's talking. Both of you have been talking about left Ambedkar at Unity, Lal Salam, Neel Salam, all of that. So in that thing, he's also writing about this only, and he says Ambedkar opened a debate between caste and class in the Indian context, which is significant even today. His vision for India's freedom is most revolutionary because it calls for the annihilation of caste, which is more fundamental than economic socialism. There's a slight difference, no, over here. What do you say about that? I mean,
I said annihilation of caste cannot happen without taking the entire class question in mind. So that's why I said in India the class struggle, not a general struggle. The class struggle in India stands on 2 feet, like us. One is economic exploitation. The other is social oppression. Unless these two are combined, you cannot even walk, forget running. So it is how to combine these two. That is the issue. That is why today, you see, for example, when Ambedkar gave this constitution, along with, I headed the drafting committee which drew up this constitution, And when he presented this constitution, he talked about all the entitlements of the Indian people. I mean, you see, what is liberty, equality, fraternity, along with that, justice. A very important element of your constitution, which is economic, social, and political. And that equality is based on delivery of justice for all.
Sure.
Now, these entitlements, it was then anticipated by Dr. Ambedkar himself that it will take a period of at least 10 years to become a reality. Till then, the socially oppressed must be assisted, and therefore reservations for a period of 10 years. Why did that 10-year period come for reservations?
Right.
Which had to be extendable. So what did this assume? That you would, number one, provide all the people equality with these entitlements. Number two, you will economically empower the disempowered today, which are mainly the socially oppressed whatever sections, like the Dalits and the Adivasis and those sections. And these are the two important elements: implementation of entitlements and economic empowerment. Unless you do these two, annihilation of caste is not possible. That's Ambedkar's own thinking.
And there's a lot of clarity when you say that, okay? But why? So you do accept that you had a difficult relationship with both Ambedkar when he was alive and with Ambedkarites who came afterwards, right? Like, for example, so I was going through this one very interesting document, 1948 Program of Democratic Revolution, right? That's the first charter in the second Congress of the CPI. You brought out this charter for how you will participate in Indian democracy. In that, for the first time, you had the mention of caste, and in which you say that you appreciate that Ambedkar is this reformer and all of that, but you also call him a separatist and somebody who's weaning away Dalits from the mainstream cause of fighting imperialism. And you say Jogendranath Mondal and Ambedkar, though they have taken minister positions. Jogendranath became a minister in Pakistan and Ambedkar became a minister in India. And they have abandoned the cause of the thing and collaborated with the imperialists. So obviously, I'm not saying that you still hold that position, but it was a painful transition to come to a point where now you're saying that this person matters and his contribution is important. What are the factors that led to this?
What matters of what Ambedkar said matters. The polemics between Ambedkar and the communists
is well established.
At that period of time, you'll have a lot of these. I mean, at that context.
What were the landmark turning points you think, sir? Because people say 2016 was a very important time. 2015-16 campus unrest, Rohit Vemula happens. Your leaders are collaborating with Ambedkarite leaders on together on the streets and all of that. Do you think that was a watershed moment where there was a greater awakening about caste issues, about Ambedkar in the communist movement?
The caste issues, awareness and everything.
Caste issues, chhod dijiye, but Ambedkar as an icon and things like that, this iconography.
It was much before that also. I mean, Jyotiba Phule and Savitri Phule were part of, you go to any of our offices, you'll find their photographs also. So Ambedkar, etc. But then the difference was what? Our whole point was, as communists, I can argue for ourselves, that in spite of such giants like Phule, like Ambedkar, like Periyar, like many other Congress Dalit leaders who became a national stature, like Jagjeevan Ram, who've written also a lot. Despite all such big leaders who could mobilize, let's say, lakhs of people, they call to and rouse them. Why is the status of the Dalits and the backwards what it is today? 7 decades have passed. And every 10 years we have to go on. Exactly. Because the economic entitlement and economic empowerment has not been given.
Okay. Can I take you on that a little bit? Okay. That's the point. I do believe that if you read Ambedkar's writings also, there's a lot of focus. Like his first party was the Independent Labour Party. And people focus a lot on his disagreements with Dange. But I found evidence that, till the end, he was actually representing Dange in court, defending him as a lawyer and all that. So there is this Tana-Bana relationship over there. But in spite of it, there's been a very torrid, lacking in trust kind of relationship between Ambedkarites and Marxists and CPM and, all these things. And I'll if you don't mind me, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, I'll take you back to your run-ins with Kanshiram. Sitaram versus Kanshiram, right? Kanshiram versus Sitaram. And he asked you, where is your leadership? Where is your Dalit leadership? In Bengal, you are in power. And you came back and you said this is a quote that you retracted, but then it came back in circulation. I'll read it out, okay? Don't mind it. Okay.
I remember
so you
that.
say, Kanti Vishwas was the education minister for many years in West Bengal. I had no idea he was a Dalit. We used to travel all across the country in the same coupe. I did not know he was a Dalit till Kanshiram asked this. The point was these things were never part of our consciousness. Unfortunately, instead of raising the country's level to mine, you might regret this, no? Instead of raising the country's level to mine, where I, a Brahmin, did not even know I am in the same carriage as a Dalit, we had to stoop down to the level of Kanshiram. We are doing it now.
No, that is the part that was wrongly quoted.
Wrongly quoted, okay.
That I explained also.
Okay, I'll give you a second to explain.
Yeah.
I'll just finish off one reaction. So, obviously, the reference is to your identity. So, S. Anand, another Brahmin, he runs the Navayana book of, the publishing house. He says, a Brahmin finds it convenient to act caste blind. For the seemingly radical or liberal secular Brahmin, caste is at best seen as an issue that is vested in others, the non-Brahmins and the other lowly creatures. What about caste that resides and originates within himself? This liberal Brahmin has to be in denial.
No, this is the entire casteist attack that comes in. No, if you're caste, I removed my holy thread when I was in college. So what do we denial or denouncing of the caste?
Right.
So what the point that was being made there was that this sort of a disinformation campaign, that there are no Dalits in West Bengal cabinet. When we found out in the country, all the state governments, the highest proportion of Dalits and Adivasis were in the left governments. Whether it's there or whether in Kerala, it's always in the left governments. And say this is actually a slur against the communists. That you're anti-Dalit, anti-this thing, you're not conscious of this, etc. My point is, what does annihilation of caste mean? That you should be conscious of your caste.
Right.
And that is what we want, the genuine annihilation of caste. It's not that I should be conscious of my caste and I should be conscious of your caste.
Right.
Annihilation, that is exactly what Ambedkar talked of. And when you want to talk about this, remember, the Congress party in those days did not send Ambedkar to the Constituent Assembly from Maharashtra, Bombay Presidency then.
He had to go to Bengal.
It comes from the Bengal Presidency. And who was the dominant force in Bengal?
No, but who supported him and who nominated him? It was the Muslim League and the Namu.
In the Assembly, no? The Assembly elected him.
Yes.
The Assembly elected to send him there.
So there were 6 Namushudro legislators. I'm from Muslim League.
The Muslim League was part of the Bengal Assembly.
Okay.
They were in fact the larger group in the Bengal Assembly.
Right.
So this sort of, trying to build up an anti-communist campaign, is not even in the interest of annihilation of caste effort.
But is there a campaign within the communists to find common ground with people under the blue flag, you think? Is that an effort that requires more serious effort?
In fact, the slogan of laal-neel was a slogan that
But there is no Neel in any of your alliances, no, sir. You've not made any great alliance with any Neel party, any Neel leader.
Where the Neel party is? Where is the Neel party? We want the Neel party to come with us. Where is it? Where is the BSP? We have made all the appeals to us. The BSP decided not to align with anybody.
Prakash Ambedkar.
Prakash Ambedkar is there with the MBA in Maharashtra.
Yeah. You've been working with him off and on.
Chandrasekhar is there with the Samajwadi Congress Alliance in UP.
VCK is also there.
Yeah, VCK is part of that whole thing in Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
So all over the place, wherever they have, we We have this understanding in alliance with them. And in Jai Bhim, Lal Salam. Lal Salam, Jai Bhim was a slogan that the communists coined.
But then they said it's appropriation and all of that. Saying that you're appropriating without actually imbibing.
What? I mean, why can't it be the other way around?
That you're
If you're
imbibing.
going to just make a charge, why can't we say that the Dalit movement is appropriating the left slogans?
Right.
It's not a question of changing and trading charges, etc. What is in the interest of caste oppression?
Right.
How do you annihilate caste?
How do you annihilate caste? And this will be my last section or last question actually. It's about Kerala. And this is based on the reporting of my colleagues in the News Minute. So my colleague Harita John, she went and looked at this practice of Theyyam. Now, both communists and people who are anti-caste hold Theyyam up as this example of what it means to be, let's even say religious, but not necessarily sectarian, not necessarily regressive, because Theyyam is supposed to be a progressive, non-Brahmin, non-Vedic kind of a practice. Now, she went and found that in several villages where the Theyyam is conducted, A, the committee has members of the CPM, and B, each of these Theyyams also have proper graded inequality in terms of untouchability. So she went to these party villages in Kannur and in Kasargod and things like that, and found that this one thing hasn't changed only. So, while there is this entire village which is supposedly communist, the party village concept, right? I mean, the whole village is assumed to be communist. And even there is this graded inequality, there is untouchability practiced when the Theyyam is being conducted. I'll just read an excerpt from one of those, from one story. It says, many villages where Theyyam performers face caste-based discrimination are ironically party villages, that is strongholds of the CPIM. The Bhagwati temple is located in one such party village. Raghavan, name changed, and a member of the temple committee, is also a local CPIM leader. Seated in the veranda of a library, Raghavan spoke to TNM about how the Communist Party operates in these villages. There's a quote from him, okay? And so these are quotes from the ground. This is genuine reporting, okay? This says,
How many non-communist villages has been visited?
Good question. We'll visit them also.
There is a motivation here.
Achha.
How many non-communist villages have you visited and reported on such practices?
I'm sure it is more prevalent over there.
No. Then you analyze, why, what, etc. Here the thing is only to target the communists.
No, maybe not. So that's not the... See, because I know...
Well, what else is... I mean,
Okay, I'll tell you what else it is, okay? See, the thing is, we believe that...
Tell me which party has the guts, courage,
Right.
to appoint the Dalit as a Devaswam minister in charge of the temples?
Right.
Tell me.
Maybe DMK at most, but I don't think DMK has also ever done that. Just your part.
So Radhakrishnan, who's a Dalit, is the Devaswam minister in Kerala. So, who has that courage to do it today?
Proportionality. So you're basically saying that...
No,
see it in proportion.
therefore the point is, if you want to target and motivate then fine, then we'll meet you at that ground.
No.
But if you want the overall total reality...
No, I suppose what is the attempt over here is that, see, the thing is, jo gaye guzre to gaye guzre. The right wing you can't really comment on, and you really want to hold progressive parties and movements such as yours to slightly higher standards, perhaps. That's where it's coming from. It's not coming from a sense of...
And then why don't your tribe understand the actual reality? Tribe means a journalist.
Okay.
Understand the actual reality. CPM was never part of any temple committees. But when they started being taken over by the RSS,
Right.
we said we need to stop it. That is when we entered. That reality is never mentioned.
So that's an important point.
But why is it not mentioned?
Now you have.
No, I have. But all those reports, why?
Thank you. We stand corrected then.
No, that is the point. That is what I mean when I say that these are motivated things which have a certain target. Such reports, you'll have to, we take it also. So we take it not with a pinch, but a gunny bag of salt.
Gunny bag.
You don't paint the entire picture.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
So that needs to be corrected. So if you want to annihilate caste, if you want to end caste oppression, it's not a question of calling each other names. In the actual struggle, where do you stand? Are you there for the economic empowerment of these sections? Are you there for the implementation of the entitlements that the Constitution guarantees? And then you argue, saying that where is the weakness in that movement?
Right.
So that is how you got to. I mean, we are serious about annihilation of caste, ending social oppression. So that's why we combined it with economic exploitation and the class question. And wherever land reforms were done, that was one place where this Dalit oppression has considerably fallen. And who implemented land reforms? Except for Sheikh Abdullah in J&K. Every other place where land reforms were implemented were left governments. Why doesn't that ever come?
Devaraja's Karnataka.
Coastal
Karnataka.
Yeah. And that was also limited, I mean, not in the extent of actual class wars that took place.
Fair enough.
2 governments of AMS Namboodiripad were dismissed, amongst other issues, on this issue.
Yeah.
2 United Front governments in Bengal were dismissed
But they
on
also
this
say,
issue.
on the land reforms question, I mean, if you don't mind me, they also say that it didn't really transfer to the lowest communities, it went to the intermediary communities. But fair enough, I mean, that is one struggle on which your party has definitely delivered on.
Again, that part, I mean, that I completely question the veracity of that finding.
Okay.
That is also not correct. And what is happening now, when we lose, it is the reverse. When the former landlord, erstwhile landlord, actually is reclaiming that land. What is happening now in Bengal? That Sandesh Khali.
Yes.
What was that? The former landlord whose lands were taken away, given to the landless, he is recapturing those lands.
Yeah.
Or recaptured those lands. So that is what was the defeat of the left mean. So you have to see the whole picture.
Okay, so that was Sitaram Yechury of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, and his ism. I'm guessing some of you agreed with what he said, some of you might not have agreed, but I'm pretty sure all of you who heard this discussion know where you stand on these issues and what's your ism. That's all for now. Thank you.